It's another dry and lovely spring day. There's a bit of a nagging easterly breeze which takes the temperature off to a degree or so, but it's still beautiful. And the beauty of this site is enhanced by the glory which is gorse. If you like your gorse, and you like your gorse in flower, now's the time to see it, and this is the place to come. But don't come just yet while I'm here, because I like it quiet. This is probably Nottinghamshire's last unspoiled colliery site. This is Calverton Colliery. Well, I'm sorry about the breezy conditions. You'll have to ignore that and just admire the view. This is how many of our former pit tops, if not all of them, used to look post closure of the various mines. Pit tops really were absolutely wonderful places, fabulous sites for wildlife. Then people come in and think they can do better, but they can't. As a male brimstone suddenly descends and starts feeding from a dandelion flower. But this is pretty much representative of how all our pit tops used to be. The ground is obviously very dry, very stony, easily draining, quick draining, and rough like this. The vegetation is often sparse, unless there are patches of lower lying ground where the water can accumulate. And across most pit tops, stands of gorse and silver birch develop. Calverton Colliery, I must admit, is probably more gorse laden than any I've seen, with the exception of the westerly part of Thoresby pit top. And at this time of year, it looks beautiful. Gorse, it's an absolutely beautiful thing. And the scent's actually quite unusual. It's almost got a hint of cinnamon. I've never smelt the flowers of gorse up close. It's not as strong a scent as you would think. But this doesn't need scent to attract invertebrates. And it is a great attractant for an enormous range of species. I've mentioned this before, but it's important to get the message across just how useful gorse is as a nectar source for spring invertebrates. And when it flowers in profusion like this, and it's the most vibrant yellow you could have, there's really no need for any scent. Even a mole could see this. It's just beautiful. Once the mines, or any individual mines, were closed down, they tended to remain like this for a number of years. Development often occurred after maybe 5 or even 10 years, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. But within a couple of years, most of the former pit tops looked like this. I suppose in some ways it's almost like a lunar landscape, with remnants of the old coal that was no good to use, the old slack sort of coal. Those who've never had a coal fire won't have a clue what slack is. But this is the habitat. It doesn't look very good, does it? But it is. This is open, dry, stony ground, and the majority of our former colliery sites in Nottinghamshire tend to harbour a similar range of species that move in. The same type of butterflies, the same spiders, all those species that can fit in and find a niche in this type of habitat. Open stony ground like this, on generally warm south-facing slopes, are at a premium in Nottinghamshire. There's none that occur naturally. All such sites in the county are like this. They're all man-made. They're all post-industrial brownfield sites. After the last miner has clocked out for the very last time, the colliery gets left. Little work is really done. They may well shore up some of the lagoons. And this is what the terrain looks like. This is what tends to get covered up by a layer of soil. When it's like this, it's more used to invertebrates and attracts more invertebrates than when they top dress it with soil before planting. This may not look much good at all, but it is. This replicates a unique habitat, and so it attracts a quite often unique range of species. Many of the species that are found on Nottinghamshire pit tops are bare ground specialists. Some have moved in to Nottinghamshire over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. Colliery heaps, or our ex-colliery heaps, have produced many new species to the county. There's a whole range of hemipterous bugs, beetles, everything. They attract a wide range of species. There's been quite an opportunity missed, and I'm surprised that none of the universities took up the challenge. That challenge being, from when a pit first closes, no one's ever monitored the incomings and outgoings of the invertebrates there. How species move in to a completely new site. It's a blank canvas, a total blank canvas. Fabulous opportunity. Wish I'd thought of it before. And as that blank canvas gets populated by various species that like this particular habitat, as vegetation grows and becomes more substantial and covers more of the site, the range of species changes. Open ground dwelling species become more restricted to that habitat on any site, on any pit top site. And the likes of gorse and the ever invading scrub birch and oak and hawthorn, the typical three that you get on many spoil heaps, they all bring in a whole new palette of invertebrates. Over the years, of course, species die out. The first species, some of the first species that colonised our post-industrial sites, die out or get pushed out. Not pushed out by incoming species, it's more the change in terrain, the change in habitat that could ooze the species from a site. Our former pit tops have certainly introduced some new fauna and flora even to the county. The trouble is, when they get to this sort of stage, when they're heading towards the peak, they're attracting some super species here. That's when the problems start. There wouldn't be any problems if we didn't have developers that want to come in and trash these sites. There's no doubt that within a year or two, all of this here, and I haven't shown you any of it yet, will no doubt be trashed. Certainly the lower parts of it, near to Calverton itself, it will be given over to industrial units. Calverton's already got plenty of industrial units, thank you very much. And if it isn't industrial units, it'll be houses. Same old, I suppose, as happens to all our former pit tops. One of the reasons that I've come to Calverton Colliery this morning is to see whether green hair streaks are out and about in Nottinghamshire. Green hair streaks here, but I've never seen it here. The only place I've ever seen it in Nottinghamshire is Gedling Pit Top, which is a couple of miles over there. It is a difficult butterfly to notice. It's not easily observable in flight. But what there are around here are one or two micro moths. One of the most commonest, if not the commonest, micro moth around Gorse, and you'll see it flying in the daytime, and occasionally it'll perch up for 10-15 seconds before becoming active and flying off again, is Sidea ulyssitana. It's incredibly common anywhere where there's gorse. Even a site where there's probably just one gorse bush will usually hold 2 or 3 Sidea ulyssitana. At the moment, even in this secluded half moon shaped bowl of ground, there appears to be no sign of green hair streak. But I'm going to have a wander upwards a bit. Hopefully it doesn't get too breezy. See if we can find one. Well, I'm sorry if you have an aversion to the colour yellow. This isn't the video for you. Just climbing towards the highest point of Calverton Pit Top, and that's a view just looking across to Epperstone and to Epperstone Wood, or Forest. I can't remember whether it's called Forest or Wood. Anyway, it's those trees on the hill, and further down past that is the Trent Valley. The view from up here is quite something. It's a really nice spot, and especially right at the top, but I'm not intending to go right to the top because it'll probably blow my head off and you won't be able to hear me speak on camera. You'd probably like that though. Well, there's one male whitethroat sings at the back of me. There in the distance is probably the future of much of this site. There's some number of houses going on that area over there that's now being readied for building. In fact, they might have even started building now. Only a year ago they were fields. Calverton's not really any different to most large villages, and that's all it is. There's very little really in the way of shops at Calverton. There's a small precinct, but the shops and schooling isn't enough to sustain an ever-increasing population. But an ever-increasing population at Calverton is very much on the cards. This is just one of 2 or 3 additional areas of development at Calverton. Calverton is spreading northwards towards its former colliery. In the sort of lower mid-right of the screen are some industrial units. I imagine that will be expanded towards the road that I've parked on. The road runs in the sort of valley that's in front of you. It's only a minor road, but as we've seen with the likes of Calverton Colliery, nowhere is safe from development. And probably in another 50 years, all the area that I'm showing you that's filled with this beautiful gorse will be surrounded by housing. I'm afraid it's coming. Our incessant need and requirement for land for building just continues to gain apace. I worry about the future of wildlife. Beautiful, isn't it? This is probably the week, maybe into next week, but this is the week I think where Gorse looks at its absolute best. And here on the former Calverton Colliery site, it looks absolutely beautiful. Now some parts of Calverton Colliery site, namely the higher bit, has had some work done to it, some restoration work, but really it's been done that well you wouldn't have a clue there's been done at all. It's all done completely in keeping with everything else. There's no mass areas of woodland plantings, woods that have been overplanted with tens of thousands of whips, the usual kind of stuff that you get on pit tops. This, from what I've seen so far, and we'll go round a few more of the pit tops during the course of the year, is quite unusual. But there are large areas like the one I'm standing in now that are completely untouched. They were cleared and scraped, and now various types of scrub are taking over. A lot of birch scrub, but there's also a lot of dog rose here, bits of hawthorn, and quite a good ground flora. That ground flora certainly attracts the butterflies and other insects. It's a great place to come and visit. I suppose I have to put in a disclaimer, of course, about visiting any site like this. Technically, I suppose they're private, but you have to be prepared and be aware of the dangers sites like this can hold. There are hidden dangers. Usually it's best to avoid any areas of water, Not that you'll find that many areas of water now on many pit tops, but they do tend to be quite deep. And then with the silt at the bottom of them, made even deeper. Once you get in them, you won't get out. Of course, there are various dikes and gullies and say natural seepages. Don't drink any of the water on these places, especially when they're brown or red or rusty colour. That's not to be recommended. Just use a bit of this. You don't need notices, or you shouldn't need notices telling you not to do this, that and the other. You should be aware of the dangers yourself and not want to do them in the first place. But sites such as this are here to be enjoyed. The access isn't always that easy to get to these. You've got to know where to access this place from. But once you get on, enjoy them. They're full of wildlife. There's so much to see on our pit tops. And Calverton pit top is probably one of our best. Still,